Hello, my name is Andy and I am the village idiot, a man with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to the district of West Lindsey. Now I've got a good one for you today. This one's going to be done in two stages, and that's because there's a main settlement and a very, very small settlement, part of which is now a deserted medieval village. That's going to be interesting, isn't it? Welcome to the West Lindsey parish of Springthorpe. Springthorpe is a small village just to the south of Corringham, surrounded by the parishes of Corringham, Harpswell and Heapham. We start at the northern end of the village, where we encounter the playing field on the road to Corringham. This is potentially the smallest football pitch I've ever seen. I'm hoping these goals move. It has an area of 4.801 kilometers squared, giving it a population density of 26.45. Demographically, it's made up of 100% white British citizens. Springthorpe is recorded in the Domesday book as Springetorp, consisting of 21 households and a church. We pass a small green space along School Lane, which looked rather nice. There's a bigger space than this though to come across near the end of our walk. The village hall was originally Springthorpe C of E School, which served the communities of Springthorpe, Sturgate and Heapham between 1872 and 1948. When the school closed, the building became a village hall. After it was enlarged, it held up to 100 children. Nowadays, it does a fine job of holding the Parish Noticeboard. Okay, next job is to check out the cemetery, which is here behind the camera, and a church which is hiding behind these bushes at the side of the cemetery. Let's have a look at these. A small cemetery, this is between the village hall and the church of St Lawrence and St George. St Lawrence and St George is a Grade 1 listed building dated from the 11th century, and it was restored in 1865. It has a font dating from the 13th century. St Lawrence and St George is the only church in England with that dedication. In the 1300s, 4 Italians were rectors here. They seem to have been connected with each other, probably all connected with some of the Florentine merchants who were at the time developing a great trade with England. The origin of the church is uncertain. The tower is reputed to be Saxon from pre-conquest times. Regardless, these days the church can seat 130 people. Back onto School Lane now, let's head to the east and see where the rest of our route takes us. Perhaps a little preview here of two other districts of Lincolnshire that we're yet to touch on the channel, Boston and South Holland, because out there you'll find plenty of roads that look just like this one, dead straight with seemingly no end, and I certainly cannot see the other end of this road. I know where it goes. There's a corner at the end of it that turns back onto the A631, which is over there. Now in Boston and South Holland, that kind of road is commonplace, and it's called, or they're called, droves. Not quite sure whether they've got the same name here in West Lindsey, but it wouldn't surprise me if they've got a similar name. You see them all over the place in that part of the county. Springthorpe, along with 41 other villages stretching from Scunthorpe to Gainsborough, made an enormous estate called the Soke, or Manor of Kirton. The estate was owned by the Earls of Mercia and possibly was passed to Earl Leofric when he married Lady Godiva in 1023. Evidence tells us the parish has been occupied for at least 6,000 years, as Neolithic axe and arrowheads have been found here. Out onto Hill Road now. Here's the primitive Methodist chapel. They originally had a chapel here in 1831 and replaced it with this building in 1898. Along Hill Road to the north we find the village green, where there was once a pond. The two white houses here are White House Farm and Pond House. The pond is now gone, but if you come here you will find these two benches, both placed here for Royal Jubilee celebrations. Springthorpe doesn't have a pub, but seen here is the former New Inn and adjoining cottages on Hill Road. Looking back down the hill, number 9 Hill Road was once the post office. Okay, I've got a little anecdote for you here. Now, you know how much I love you guys giving me your anecdotes. I've got one for you. Now, when I was a kid and I grew up around here, myself and my dad, we used to deliver the football pools for Vernon's and for Littlewoods. And the area we covered was Heapham, Corringham, and here in Springthorpe. And that white house that's behind me was one of the places that we used to call. And I'll always remember it's one of the houses that I used to love going to, because the guy who lived there at the time, we're talking at least 15-20 years ago here, the guy who lived there always used to answer the door with a very cheery hello, but it used to have a sort of posh sound to it. It used to be like hello or something like that, and it's always one that's stuck in my mind every time we did the round. Whether he still lives there, I don't know. He was a fairly youngish bloke. I don't think he was that old. You never know, he might still live there. Hello if you do. Springthorpe's current average house price stands at a value of £244,000. Springthorpe village is near the source of the River Till, which is in Corringham. The river passes about half a mile to the west of the village. Now we're taking a drive to Sturgate. Here's a bit more history. The residents of Springthorpe have been known as Springthorpites for a long time. Over a period of several centuries, these occupiers of Springthorpe changed from being hunter-gatherers to food producers, primarily for Roman soldiers in nearby Lincoln. Production of food for both their own consumption and for sale to outside agencies would sustain the majority of Springthorpites until about 1950. Okay, so now we're in the hamlet of Sturgate, which just falls within the boundaries of Springthorpe, and it doesn't cover Sturgate airfield. That's actually in Heapham, and that's next week's episode. But Sturgate is important because it's the site of a former medieval village which is now deserted. And this brings me on to today's TVI Ask the Locals segment, because I did a lot of research into this before I came here to try and find where it was so I could take a few snaps of the general area, but nothing came up online. So it's down to you guys. Where was the settlement? Because the modern day Sturgate doesn't really give me any clues. What I can do though is I can put the camera back on the dashboard and show you what's here by driving very slowly through the village, because it is quite small, and if I go too fast it will be over in a flash and you won't have got the idea. Very rural settlement. But before we do that, it's time to give you today's picture bit, and that's coming right now. Springthorpe has its very own village website. It is linked in the description, and most of the information you've seen in this video came from it. The website has these amazing old maps, including this one from 1827 and 28, which shows the area around the village and neighbouring settlements. There's also two from 1906, showing Springthorpe and Sturgate separately. In a glass case just inside the doorway of the church is the maiden's crown and garlands, which are carried at the funeral of any unmarried girl and are a symbol of chastity. This is one of three carried at the funeral of Mary Hill, who died Shrove Tuesday in 1814 after having pulled one of the bell ropes and being unfortunately dragged up against the belfry floor above. Sturgate's deserted medieval village was known as both Sturgate and Stourgate. Do any of you Springthorpe locals know where it was? Wherever it was documented from the end of the 12th century, and seemingly now there's no trace of it left. And that's just about it for the parish of Springthorpe. And here's a little bit of proof about Sturgate Airport. As you can see from this sign, Springthorpe is half a mile away from the hamlet of Sturgate, and Sturgate Airport is 1.5 miles away to the south. It's much closer to Upton than it is to Springthorpe. How about that? So there you go. That's the parish of Springthorpe. And that's another one down in West Lindsey, and it's a bit of a drab, dreary day, but hopefully it's going to fare up by the time I get to my next village, which is Heapham, and the boundary is just here. In fact, where I'm pointing the camera, you can see some houses there, and yeah, I'm off to start Heapham next. But for now, this has been the parish of Springthorpe, and I've been Andy, otherwise known as the Village Idiot.